Combs is right here in South Florida.
Local 10's Trent Kelly joins us live with what our camera saw during the raid and the investigation at the center of it all. Trent.
Yeah, that's right, Gio and JC. These coast-to-coast raids happening in the middle of the day yesterday. And as you mentioned, one of those two properties that was searched by federal authorities happens to be right here on Miami Beach's Star Island. The gates of that home you can actually see just behind me here. This all comes as Combs is facing several lawsuits accusing him of assault and sex trafficking, among other things, claims the music megastar so far has denied. Federal agents working well into the night after raiding the Star Island mansion owned by rapper and businessman P Diddy Combs. The surprise show of force beginning around noon Monday as Homeland Security investigators carried out a search warrant. Sources say the search was tied to an ongoing investigation into allegations of sex trafficking. Throughout the day, investigators were seen carrying out boxes of potential evidence from inside the multi-million-dollar home which Combs has owned for years. But that's not all, as agents were also active on the West Coast, searching another house owned by the music mogul in Los Angeles. The raid in Beverly Hills also tied to the same investigation, with armed officers moving in the middle of the day. Combs coming under fire in recent months after becoming the target of several sexual assault lawsuits. One of the civil suits was filed by his former girlfriend, who says Combs raped and abused her. That case settled out of court one day after it was filed.
Let's just get straight to it, man. I didn't even think I was going to do a story on this, but through reading and watching the news, it's it's big news all over the whole, I guess you could say, the world with this P Diddy Combs situation. And I really didn't see no angle for me or, the audience that I have to really deal with this this topic, but I did a live on it and people said that they were interested in it. But then I thought about something. For people that follow me on the Instagram platform, a lot of times I debate, I'm debative. Anyway, make a long story short, get to the point, guy was trolling me, a guy by the name of Aunt Glizzy, Barberson TV. And while he was trolling me, he said, yo, you talk about prison all the time. All you talk about is prison. And then, the defense of them trolling me, I said, I'm a prison expert. You know what I mean? People, they blog and they write about what they know about. Stephen A. Smith talks about sports. Bloomberg reports on law and economics and different things like that. So to get to the point, I said, dang, Diddy's a millionaire. He come from living lavish. He got a $50 million, we're not gonna call this a mansion. They keep calling it a $50 million mansion. But if you look at the property, like the property is gorgeous. It's more like a $50 million compound, and I'm just talking about the one in Florida. Diddy made an $18 million payment to close out the mortgage on that home so that he could make sure that he had a $50 million asset to go into this this bail hearing, which, as everybody know by now, is denied. So even with the speedy trial, so like I said, I'm gonna go on the law and I'm gonna go into prisons. Even with the speedy trial, if Diddy is not if his lawyer can't do some other things legally to get him out of prison, then that means he's gonna be at MDC for at least a year, even under speedy trial. That's terrible. And I spent over a year in DC jail, and DC jail is one of the worst detention centers in the country. It's known, like, the people from the January 6th, the riots, the white people, family, and the lawyers, and even prosecutors was like, look, these people can't stay here. If they couldn't stay there, I don't know why I can. Or any of us from DC could stay there. Terrible situation. But they say MDC is worse. Some experts in prison analysis said that it's the worst place in the federal prison system. I don't recall when they said it was built, but it's a very, very old structure, right? It's in a warehouse district. In the warehouse district, it used to be a warehouse itself. And it reminded me of Lawton. In the winter, it's super cold. In the summer, it's super hot. A lawyer that represented a friend of mine was telling me that when he page indictment that I got, everybody then, showed it and shared it by now. So I'm gonna get back to that. I'm gonna share some of it in this video that I do right here. But in the process of getting the indictment, I just started to see where he was housed at. And I want you to see where he's housed at. And I want you to understand that, imagine eating whatever you want, anytime you want. to going to a place where as though he's not even going to a regular prison. Like, you know, it's not like he's just going to jail and he gonna be in population and people, they put him in the shoe as a high profile person. If you just want to go over a couple things that happened in MDC, and I'm sure a lot of people gonna watch this, they from New York, I'm sure y'all know or have heard, but a lot of people from other places probably don't know. I mean, when you talk about MDC Brooklyn, you talking about deadly stabbings, barbaric living conditions, maggots in the food. I'm not making this up. I'm reading this from a report. I jotted it down. It's in MDC Brooklyn, where they house these federal detainees pre-trial. Even his lawyer said, this on any other blogs. I haven't. It could be so. But this indictment is nothing in my opinion. I read it. You know, it sounds real jazzy. It sounds real heavyweight, real thorough. But mark my words, they're going to come back with a superseding indictment with other charges, other allegations. The discovery hasn't even been presented to the defense, so it's much more litigation that's going to go on with this matter right here. But back to MDC Brooklyn. So where Diddy is currently housed in pretrial detention is the notorious Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. He's going to be there at least until the end of trial. And for a racketeering sex trafficking trial, like I said, even on the speedy trial, it's going to be, if he don't get out, it's going to be at least a year. Like, you know what I mean? That's going to be rough regardless. It's the same facility that is no stranger to famous faces. They had the Maxwell lady, the one that was the co-defendant with the co-defendant of Jeffrey Epstein. We know who that is. They also had R. Kelly in there, like I said before, in the sexual abuse charges. So for those that don't know, just bring you up to speed.
Today I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment, charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution. The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged in the indictment, to carry out this conduct, Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice. Let me say a little bit more about the charges. The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair.
He pleaded not guilty to the charges, had the first magistrate judge said no bail, came back today, high-powered lawyer, came back with a plan, a plea, say, look, we're going to put up $50 million, my $50 million mansion. We could do ankle bracelet, the GPS monitor, you know how they do that. No internet, no female interaction. Let me go back and stay in Miami during that time. They said, nah. Even the lawyers complaining that MDC Brooklyn is not the type of place to fight a case like this because anybody who's been in trouble before, been in court, know you're going to generate paperwork that's going to be out of this world. And most of the paperwork that's coming from by way of discovery these days is coming electronically. They say there's no way he can even really look over his case. At least that's the argument, unless he gets it somewhere else. So they just making this whole situation hard for him right there.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we made a bail appeal to Judge Carter. It did not go our way. The fight continues. We're not giving up by a long shot. I told Mr. Combs I'm going to try and get his case to trial as quickly as possible. I'm going to try and minimize the amount of time he spends in very, very difficult and I believe inhumane housing conditions in the special housing unit of the Metropolitan Detention Facility. And I'm going to do everything that I can to move his case as quickly as possible. I understand that the government has a great amount of electronic devices that they have to download and provide to me, but everything's on the government's timetable, nothing's on the defendant's timetable, and they're going to have to accommodate me and him and give us a quick trial, and I'm going to be pushing for that. He's ready, he's focused. He has been ready to defend this case since he first found out about this case. Nothing has changed from his perspective. I obviously would much prefer to fight this case with him out of jail, and we are going to try to bring that about through additional legal process. But wherever he is, his resolve is the same. He believes he's innocent. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. He's doing good. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. I'll do that. So in the past, Essex County, New Jersey, it's a county facility, but it has a contract with the federal government, and you can get certain number of federal inmates in Essex County, New Jersey. And in my experience, it's an easier place to deal with. I think it's better for the person being housed there, and it's easier to get access, to him. I mean, one of the hardest things when you're preparing for a very significant trial with a great deal of discovery is you want your client to be able to have access to, the electronic discovery. Nothing nowadays is in paper form. Everything's electronic. So you need to make sure that your client has access to a computer and that it can look at the discovery, that comes in. So that was my idea. All right. I'm going to go.
Now, in the first court appearance that was on Tuesday, which is the one I was talking about, Diddy came in front of the judge. They said, nah, we're not letting you go. And they claimed that he was a flight risk, and they claiming that he's dangerous and he's a danger to potential witnesses. They said that there's one witness that they're making a big issue about. I thought about it for a second. They said he hadn't spoken to her, according to the paperwork, in years. And then all of a sudden, within 7 or 8 days of his knowledge of her being a potential witness, he tried to contact her several times. So they saying that that's witness intimidation. That's what they saying. In the hearing and the legal team, they argue several courts in the district have already recognized that the conditions at the Metropolitan Detention Center are not fit for pretrial detentions. Even some judges have ruled on that. Some judges have said they strongly agree with it. I found some cases where judges would not even allow the defendant in the case to be sent back. Like when court is over and people get cuffed up, they get back on the bus and they go back to the jail. Some judges has ordered that defendants in that case or the case that they had on their docket not be sent back there to be held somewhere else and transferred somewhere else. I don't know how often that happens. I'm not sure how many people are lucky enough for that to happen. Because, I mean, this place right here, if you follow my channel, you follow the DC Black channel, you done heard me report on Marion. You done heard Fly talk about Marion, ADX. You done heard people like Tone and them talk about being in the shoe, Shaka being in the shoe, these different type of places. They say that this detention center, because it's a BOP joint, they say this is worse at some of these places. So imagine, I done shows with Steve Crawford talking about ADX, talking about being in the shoe and hazing them for 4 years straight. Can you imagine if you compare those things that we talk about? Now, these dudes that we talking about, these tough, hardened dudes that been in prison, everything that you could throw at them, they've endured. Wayne Perry, been out ADX almost 30 years itself. Mustafa Zulu, all these dudes that I do, I'm making this point because all these dudes that I do these things on, these dudes that have been through all type of torturous prison conditions. They didn't sit nowhere with millions of dollars, flying on jets, man, sipping champagne, eating caviar. This man, man, when they say hell on earth, it might really be hell on earth for him. So anyway, MDC has been plagued by violence, chronic understaffing, a lack of medical care, and unsanitary conditions, just to name a few. According to 1 week, there was at least a couple stabbings a week. One guy was stabbed in the eye with a makeshift knife, the inmate report. And these knives, according to this particular inmate that did this report at this jail, like this ain't no, like, this ain't for Oliver North. This ain't, they send P Diddy to a real junk, like dudes in transit in the feds be in these junks sometimes. So it said, in these knives, again, I have never been to a jail. according to the report, the person that was writing, right? This is my first time in jail, but these knives are 6, 9 inches long sometimes, you know, homemade with material from the steel walls and the bunk beds. Somebody has taught these people how to cut them out. The prisoners are creative, very violent. There's stabbings, at least a couple stabbings a week. And I didn't repeat that as a mess up. That's how he wrote it. That's how it's written. So I guess that's how he spoke. Cockroaches in the food. This group of people said that they even found videos and have obtained videos of cockroaches crawling in the food, maggots in the food, broken lights and mold in the showers, no running water in some cells, toilets that do not flush and that are filled up with human waste. In another criminal case, a federal judge by the name of Gary Brown threatened to vacate the sentences of a 75-year-old who was convicted of a tax scam if he was sent to the facility because of the dangerous and barbaric conditions. The judge said he was going to vacate the whole... When have you ever heard of this? When have you ever heard of this? The judge said he was going to vacate the man's 75 years old. He is an old person, and I can understand he might have died in that joint. He was going to vacate the conviction of a 75-year-old man because the conditions were so bad. His ruling referenced 2 murders and a stabbing that went unchallenged by officers until it was almost over. So that's like some Feds stuff. You know, the Feds, they get that junk, they get to work, and boom, boom, boom. The Feds don't rush in and stop nothing. I mean, they may space some mace here and there, but they gonna wait. Like, I've even seen COs in the Feds ask a dude that's punishing the dude. I'm talking about them stabbed him 20, 30 times by the time he said, yo, are you finished? You know what I mean? So they say unchallenged. That's what it said. It said his ruling referenced 2 murders and a stabbing that went unchallenged by officers until it was almost over. These incidents demonstrate a woeful lack of supervision, breakdown of order, and an environment of lawlessness that constitutes unacceptable, reprehensible, and deadly mismanagement, according to court documents. David Patton, a former head of the Federal Defenders of New York, told NYI a lack of medical care, to real serious sanitation issues, to maggots in the food, cockroaches in the food, and everything that you can think about is problematic at a jail or a prison is problematic at MDC. And it has been for a very long time. In 2019, more than 1,000 inmates were stuck in freezing cells for days when there was no heating following a power outage in the middle of the winter, according to reports. One inmate even was hospitalized from hypothermia. Another inmate had to have a toe amputated because of lack of circulation. This is a serious place right here. For Diddy, this drastic change in circumstances for his rich celebrity lifestyle may be hard to swallow, according to this one particular report. He is currently being held in the special housing unit, the unit where inmates are required additional protection or are usually just housed alone for their safety and will be kept away from other prisoners. It's going to be a superseding indictment, and they're going to push. I don't know if they're going to get Diddy out, but they're going to get Diddy out of that prison. That's going to be too much on him, I believe. But they did keep Jeffrey Epstein there, and they did keep R. Kelly there. So we're going to see what happens, man. Free to real. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done it. Like, share, tell somebody about it, man. Appreciate y'all rocking with me. DC Blacks, free to real.